Welcome to episode 17 of live.withcode.uk. Well done to everybody who's joined us on the journey from the beginning of lockdown to this point, which is the last week before the summer holidays. So we're going to take a break for the next 6 weeks, or 7 weeks. We've got a longer holiday than normal this year because everybody deserves a rest. It's been a real long, hard slog, but well done for everyone who's used it productively. In September, we're going to do things slightly differently. We're going to change the format and hopefully we'll continue with some weekly videos, but we'll work our way through the GCSE spec for the programming content for Edexcel GCSE Computer Science, the 2020 GCSE 9 to 1. And we'll work through all of those learning objectives, which ties in quite nicely because you voted for validation this week. And validation is one of these learning objectives. I can't find it in here. Let's have a look. Validation 6.4.3. We need to look at length checks, presence checks, range checks, and pattern checks. So there'll be a link. It'll be the last of all of the links. The free interactive Python tutorials is a slightly different format. This week it will take you to a keyword activity that you can test yourself and see if you remember the different types of validation. Validation just means when the user types stuff into our program, it's quite likely that will make our program crash if the user types in something we don't want them to type it in. So we need to check and see if they type in something sensible. What they type in we call the input data, and we need to validate it. We need to check and make sure it's sensible. And these are all different ways of checking, and we'll give some examples. The program we're going to do in the live coding today is a countdown timer. So if you leave it blank, it will count down, sadly, sorry about this, until the beginning of September. But nobody particularly wants to have that running through the school holidays. So you can put your own dates in there. You can put the start of the holidays, or you can put Christmas and count down until Christmas. And it'll work out how many days, hours, minutes, and seconds until whatever date that you put in. So let's get started with some live coding. If we want to validate, then we need to let the user type something in. So let's see, the date is going to be, we ask the question, which date would you like to count down to? And if you're going to validate, it makes sense to tell the user how you'd like them to enter that data in the first place. So for an example, we'll use the 1st of September. You can change that in your version. The 1st of the 9th, 2020. Notice we're doing the British version rather than the American version. So this is days in the month, and this is months of the year. You can change that around if you prefer. So we ask the question, what I'd like to happen is it validates, as in it doesn't crash if things go wrong. It checks what the user types in, and it continues if it's valid, or it loops back round if it's not valid. So the first type of validation check is a presence check. Does the user type in anything at all? So if the date is equal to an empty string, we can say, oi, please type something in. So if they leave it blank, it gives you a message. If they type something in, it accepts it. What we're going to do slightly differently is make a loop. We're going to say, we'll assume that what the user types in is invalid. And then we're going to loop round whilst the user has not typed in something correct, whilst not valid. So valid is a Boolean value, either true or false. And whilst it's false, this loop is going to keep repeating. So if I leave it blank, it's going to keep saying oi. But if I type something in, then at the moment it continues as well. We don't really want that because we haven't told it to stop. So we can say valid equals true. Let's try again. So if I leave it blank, it keeps going round. If I type something in, it stops the loop. Because we set valid to true, which means next time we go to the while loop, valid is true, so we break out of the loop. Okay, what we're going to do differently is set a default value for the date. So if we leave it blank, and this is our presence check for validation, presence check, we're going to put a default value in. So I'll use the same one that the user is given up here. Again, you can change that in your version. And then we'll go on to the next type of validation check. So let's have a length check next. So this counts the number of characters that the user types in. So we'll use len, the built-in function len. We'll count how many characters are in the variable called date. And if there are 8 characters, then we'll assume that the user input is valid. So if we leave it blank, it takes the default value, which has 8 characters. If we put in anything else, something too big or too short, it keeps looping round. But if we put in something with exactly 8 characters, we're fine. Okay, for now I'm just going to put outside of the loop down here, we're going to put what the date is, so that it's clear that if you leave it blank, it takes that default value. So this is a length check, and it's a type of validation. Okay, so the next type of validation we'll go for is a pattern check. Now this one is a bit more involved. This means checking that we type in the right thing. At the moment, it doesn't matter what we type in for the 8 characters, it will assume it's valid, but we want to make sure this 3rd character is a / and this 6th character is a / and all of the others are numeric values. Now, if you're doing this properly or efficiently, you probably use regular expressions for this, but we haven't got time to explain how those work in this video. You can research it if you want to. So instead of assuming it's valid if we have 8 characters, let's put another if statement nested inside. So we'll say if the 3rd character, so that's the 1st character of what the user types in, the 2nd, and the 3rd, if that is equal to a / that means the 3rd character is a /, and so we want 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the 6th character at position 5, because we start counting from position 0, if that is also equal to a /, at that point we can say valid is equal to true. What have we got wrong here? Oh, because I've only got one equal sign. There we go. So now, if we put in a length, something that will pass the length check, it still thinks it's invalid because we need those / in there. So that works. But sadly, we can put in characters and it will still think it's valid at the moment, even though this is an invalid date because we've got characters instead of numbers. So we need to do a bit more validation. So this is the beginning of our pattern check. And this, again, is a type of validation. So let's break it down with, let's get all of the different parts separately. So as well as just getting one character, you can get a substring, so part of a string. So 0:2 will get the substring, part of the string, starting from position 0 up to position 2. So if that is numeric, and also if date, so this time we don't want the /, which would be position 2, we want the one afterwards, up to and including 5, so that's this part here. This is at position 3, and this is at position 4, so we stop just before position 5. That's what this means in here. If that is numeric as well, and the same for the final part, so that's going to be position 6 to 8. This is getting a substring, it's finding a string within a string. So it's only going to be valid if all 3 of those parts, this bit, and this bit, are all numeric, as in numbers. So let's try. If we have / and then 2 digits and /, this passes the length check, and it passes the first part of the pattern check with the /, but it doesn't pass these lines here to make sure they're numeric. So let's try again, 0, 1, 0, 9, 20. Great, it passes all of the validation now. So we've got a sensible value in. Now I need to turn that into a countdown timer. So to do this, we need Python to be aware of what time it is. So we'll import time. And we'll construct a time object from these parts here. So we'll say the date that we're counting down to, we're going to use the time module, and then inside the time module there's a function called strptime, which means we can throw a string at it, so some text, which is the date that the user's typed in, and we need to tell Python what format that's in. Now we put the date first, and then a forward slash, then we put the month, and then the user's typed in the year. Okay, let's see if we print that. Let's see what happens. I'll leave it blank. So we've got an object now on the 1st of September 2020. That's not much use for us. What we're going to do is convert that into a number of seconds since the Linux epoch, which sounds very confusing. It's just the number of seconds since 1st of January 1970, so that we can compare that number of seconds with a date now and find the difference. Right, how do we do that? So target seconds equals time.mkTime. So we're going to use this object that we've just made now that groups all the different parts of the date together. And then we just get one large value that is the number of seconds since that Linux epoch, which is just how computers store dates. Most computers store dates. It's the 1st of January 1970. So that big number there we can compare with what the date is now. So let's work out what the date is now. So now is equal to time dot another function that's built into the time module, local time, and then we also need to convert that to seconds using the mkTime function, and I'm going to display both of them. So this is the number of seconds since the 1st of January 1970 that we want to count down to. This is the number of seconds since that Linux epoch, the 1st of January 1970, for right now when I'm recording this. So we can compare them. Hopefully we can say the difference is, so we're assuming that the date we're counting down to is in the future. So target seconds minus now seconds, and then let's also display that value as well. So here we go, this is the 1st of September, this is right now, and this is how many seconds until the 1st of September. So all we need to do now is count down for that number of seconds. So let's put this in a loop, while true, because each time we loop round, the number of seconds right now is going to change. We need to calculate that lots of times. This doesn't need to be in the loop because that date doesn't change. It's just going to be whatever the user types in. Right, so we could do with working out, displaying this in a more user-friendly way. So working out how many minutes and how many hours and how many seconds and everything like that. So let's see. We need to start with the difference, so that's in seconds. Then we can work out the minutes, which will be the difference divided by 60. But if we display the number of minutes like that, then we're going to have a fraction. Let's see. Yeah, you can see sometimes you've got a nasty fraction there and it keeps looping round. I'm going to slow that loop down by a second each time. So time.sleep by 1 second, so that we only see it once every second. Okay, so we want to get rid of the fractional part and just keep the integer value. To do that, we're going to use an integer division operator. So this means divide. This means integer division, which means just get rid of all of the fractional part. So now we only see the integer value. It always rounds down. So that's the number of minutes. We've got 60 seconds in a minute. We can do the number of hours equals the number of minutes divided by 60. Again, using integer division, we don't want any fractions. We can work out the number of days. So hours, integer division by 24. And I'm going to stop there, but you can go on to years if you want to as well. And then let's start displaying it. So let's say the number of So I'm going to use string.format here, the number of days, the number of hours, the number of minutes, and then the number of seconds. So we want the number of days. So this means display that value, and then we'll want hours, and then minutes and seconds until, and then the value that we're counting down to, which is what the user typed in, which is date. Okay, if we run it, we'll probably have an error because it doesn't know what seconds is yet. So for seconds, we want the difference mod 60. That means, remember we had a huge value in here. We want to limit the number of seconds to less than 60. And we want to do the same for minutes. It's pretty pointless for us to know that there's thousands of minutes. We just want to know how many less than 60. So we'll use the mod operator. So once we've worked out the minutes, hours, and days, we can say minutes mod equals 60, which means limit it to a value less than 60, take the remainder after dividing, and then the same for hours, mod equals 24, because we want to be less than 24. And let's try again. So hopefully it's now going to be counting down until whichever value you type in. There's one more type of validation that we haven't done at the moment, because if we type in a value, a date that's already passed, so the first of last year or 2 years ago, there's no point really having a negative countdown. So I'm going to put a range check in here. Let's see, once we've worked out the difference in seconds, we can say if the difference is less than 0, we can say this date has already passed. And then we can break out of this loop here. So let's try again. The 1st of the 1st, 2019. It's already passed and it breaks out of the loop. Fab. Okay, so quite a lot going on here. The important thing is whenever the user types in something, we need to validate it. If we didn't, so let's just copy that, paste it in, and comment out all of our validation. If we didn't do any validation and we left it blank, the program's going to crash because it does things unexpected with an unexpected input. So validation just means checking what the user types in, making sure it's a sensible value so that when you process that data, it goes correctly. We've got a presence check, seeing if anything is there, a length check, making sure it's the correct number of characters, and a pattern check to make sure that what you'd expect to be at each position is what you get at each position. I'm going to copy and paste some challenges down at the bottom if you want some to work through. Let's have a look. So you could make it so that if you don't type in a date, it'll count down until Christmas. So much better than counting down until the beginning of September. It's like those horrible back to school notices you get in shops. Much better if it counts down to something you're looking forward to. Make it so that it displays years as well as days. So we add a variable for years and then use the integer division to divide by 365. And add another range check so that it will only loop round if it's less than an hour, otherwise your program's going to go on forever and ever and ever. 47 days for me. Okay, thanks ever so much for watching. Remember, you can find links in the description of this video or on live.withcode.uk to the code that we've gone through in this video, and also to the K-Pride keywords activities, and some links to test yourself on the different types of validation. Have a really good break over the summer, and hopefully I'll be posting some more videos in September. All the best. Bye-bye.